When it comes to a hazmat response, speed and accuracy are everything.
Speed and power, baby.
Well, hold on. Speed and power is a Clarkston Farm thing, without a doubt. But speed and accuracy, now that's a 908 device thing.
Right. You guys know the little black box. Actually, it's not so little, but now they have the little red box too.
Yeah, and it's the reason why hazmat teams around the world are trusting 908 devices. Their handheld MX908 and the Explorer are absolutely changing the game.
That is one of the few devices out there that can actually identify Novichoks.
Yeah, but not just Novichok, right? This isn't a one-trick pony that we're dealing with here. It can identify all sorts of chemical warfare agents, pharmaceutical-based agents, drugs, explosives, and it does it all at trace levels, which is just mind-blowing.
Right, and I know that the Explorer can identify and quantify over 5,000 gases and vapors in seconds, and that is changing the game.
It's why hazmat teams all around the world are trusting 908 devices. You guys go check them out, 908devices.com, and upgrade your metering toolbox.
Hey, we're back.
Good
now.
morning.
Let's bring in our guy, Bob Wise, from the US EPA. Bob, how are you?
Okay, how are you guys doing?
Not bad, not bad. Ready to dive into some Mercury stuff. Now, I'm looking at the video and I'm seeing EPA Federal On-Scene Coordinator. So, who are we talking to?
So, like I said, my name's Rob Wise. I am a federal on-scene coordinator with the EPA Emergency Response Region 9. A few folks that don't know where that is on the Pacific Southwest, California, Nevada, Hawaii, Arizona, and all the Pacific Trust territories. What are federal on-scene coordinators? We are basically the incident commanders for federal EPA for hazardous substance responses and oil spills. We have two primary purposes. Our probably most important purpose is to provide support from a technical perspective and also somewhat from a financial perspective to our state and local partners for emergency response. So we do emergency response, and then also from a cleanup perspective. So let's say, for example, since we're talking about mercury, let's say we have a mercury release in a high school. Mm-hmm. We would get called out by our local agency partner, whether that's a fire department or a health department. We would provide technical assistance in the assessment of that high school. And then if the school itself was, say it was a less financially solvent school district, mm-hmm. we would provide cleanup assistance in the mitigation of that mercury release in that school. We are part of the Superfund program, and we do what are called removal actions, which are cleanups that cost less than $2 million to clean up and take less than a year to do. Okay. So normally some of the things you would see OSCs at would be, like an oil spill. You would see OSCs at industrial fires, but we can also be at bigger things too. OSCs ran the incident at Washington Amprax. OSCs just got done running the LA fires.
Oh my God,
OSCs were on the ground at Palestine. So we can also run larger incidents. It just depends on the situation.
Well, I mean, today the topic at hand is mercury, and you're quite the expert in mercury. Of those things like mercury, what do you like? How are you seeing this stuff?
So normally, probably I would say about 65% of our responses are in the residential environment.
Okay.
People have it in their homes, and kids get into, and most of the time it's kids getting into it, teenagers get into it, they find it in the
Kids.
garage, they take it into the home, they play with it, and they contaminate the home with it, and then parents find it, and then they call 911. And our local engine companies will respond to it. They'll realize what they have. They call the health departments. The health departments call us.
Okay.
And we end up with some type of cleanup scenario. And
So
the cleanup scenarios can run from either a local or state agency doing the cleanup, the homeowner getting stuck doing the cleanup, or EPA doing the cleanup, depending on the level of contamination.
So the message from the 80s that parents that play with mercury will have kids that play with mercury it still holds true today.
Maybe not necessarily. It depends on the extent of the release. The releases can range from everything from someone who broke a thermometer in their house to a kid that found a jar of mercury that was left over from some relative that was storing in the house, or and sometimes we'll have cases where we've had cases where homeowners have purchased houses that were contaminated when they purchased the house. We did a house in Escondido, California. The family bought the house, and the previous tenant had contaminated the house unbeknownst to the family that had purchased the house. And we were following the cookie crumb trail from another site, and that's how we discovered this house was contaminated. And in that particular case, we ended up doing 4 different cleanups, including a mad chemist site that was connected to this guy. This guy had a storage locker that was full of little jars of chemicals that he had contaminated with mercury.
Wow.
So it covers a wide range of different types of sites.
I'm very used to seeing the responding to the type of mercury where it comes from a thermometer or a blood pressure cuff in a doctor's office, but there's other types of mercury that you guys deal with other than just the liquid mercury that we bat around like a cat and try to pick up with duct tape.
Yeah, so the elemental mercury is probably 85 to 90% of all of our cases, but probably after that, the most common type is inorganic mercury, and we're seeing that in the form of salts. And where we see that the most is we see that in cosmetics. So we'll see mercury in
Like
skin
stuff
lightening
people put
creams.
on their face.
Yeah. So we have 1 or 2 or 3 cases of that a year here on the West Coast. I don't know how much of that you're seeing on the East Coast, but we see it in skin lightening creams, and usually when we see it, it'll show up in the emergency room, and then the emergency room doctors will call the health department because it's one of those things they have to report. And then it'll filter its way up to us, and it'll cause a whole rash of responses. And literally, when we get the face cream cases, it turns into an investigation. And here in California, we'll get California Department of Public Health involved. We'll get the local health department involved. In some cases, we'll even get FDA involved and CDC because we'll have to figure out where it's coming from. The last one we ended up with 8 or 9 houses. We even got the Mexican version of CDC involved because we were able to trace it down to Mexico, and the Mexican CDC started following up on their end because that's where it originated from. And the mercury itself is a very effective skin lightener, but it also causes mercury poisoning. And many times, how this is discovered is the kids will get mercury poisoning, and they'll show up in the emergency room, and they'll discover, hey, why does the kid have mercury poisoning? And that's how they'll discover, hey, mom has this cosmetic. And it's gotten on the kids, and then they'll trace it back to mom, and then we'll start following the cookie crumb trail as to, hey, where is this stuff coming from?
Oh, that's the price of beauty.
Yeah, and the problem with the cosmetics is it's a lot harder to find. So one of the problems we've had when we have face cream sites is not all the instruments work equally. For example, the Jerome 505, which is the atomic fluorescence instrument, it doesn't work as well with the face cream sites because it doesn't work as well with the inorganic salts as like a Lumix does, or the gold film instruments or a Jerome 405. And I have no idea why that is. We've just noticed that when we have the Jerome 505 and the Lumix in the face cream environment, the 505 is usually like an order of magnitude off in the readings.
Will these organic mercuries evaporate? Do they?
Okay, so these are inorganic. This is inorganic salts.
Sorry, the inorganic.
So we've also seen, we haven't seen it, but California Department of Public Health has seen organic mercury in the face creams. And that is methyl mercury. That is very dangerous.
These aren't off the shelf kind of Estee Lauder.
No, these are not off the shelf. This stuff is being made. It's being made in homemade labs. There was one, I only know of one lab in the United States. They busted some guy or some folks up in Tulare County making it, but most of it's being made either overseas or it's being made in Mexico.
All right, so now we have a new course called Illicit Clan Labs Cosmetics.
Yes.
I didn't think that was going to pop up on my 2025 bingo card.
It's funny you say that because for this year's continuing challenge, we do have a course on mercury in cosmetics and consumer products.
Unbelievable.
So
that's crazy.
It is that much of a problem that I decided to get the experts from California Department of Public Health to teach a class for me this year at the continuing challenge.
So you guys see that as a hospital red flag? Somebody comes in, right? I can imagine first responders not really getting involved in that situation. Am I wrong? Have you had situations where things like salt labs, cosmetic, the labs, the salts, the cosmetics, that the fire department was somehow intertwined in that response?
Well, where we've had the issue is where we've had contaminated ambulances. So we've had to go back and decon ambulances afterwards.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they're not super contaminated, but enough that we don't want it in the ambulance. We'll have to go and clean a gurney or something like that.
Where are you I mean, obviously it's out there. I mean, I literally have a jar right behind me of mercury, allegedly. Allegedly, I have that. Yeah, but like, where are people sourcing this stuff from?
So we're finding it in all sorts of places. You see it in old manometers, barometers, blood pressure cuffs. That's a really common one. People have, grandpa was a doctor and they have his old blood pressure cuff. We're seeing it in industrial devices, mercury switches. Thermostats, right. Mercury switches. We did a site where I live in Coronado. We had a couple that had a business where they were replacing thermostats for the local electrical company, and they were supposed to leave the thermostats to replace with the homeowner. Well, they ended up taking them with them. And at the end of the job, they went to their client and said, hey, I got all these Mercury switches. And their client says, well, hey, you guys were supposed to leave those with the. The
homeowner, right?
The homeowner, yeah. And
imagine getting a knock on your door and somebody just hands you a little capsule of mercury. They're like, "Here you go. We forgot to leave this behind."
Well, they were supposed to leave the whole thermostat, but they ended up taking the mercury switches out of like 1,200 thermostats, and their client said, "Hey, now this is your problem to get rid of them." And when they went to get a cost for it, it was going to cost more to get rid of all those thermostat mercury switches than what they got paid for the entire job. So they just put all these Mercury switches in 2 duffel bags and threw them in their garage. Well, about 4 or 5 years later, they had a fire in their garage, and mercury goes from a liquid to a gas at minus 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So guess what happens in a fire? All that liquid mercury starts to boil. It ruptures out of the mercury switches. It gets all over the ground. So when Coronado Fire did their overhaul, how it was reported to us, it looked like, they said it looked like a silver paint in the debris.
Wow.
But they knew it wasn't silver paint because they said it would never survive the fire. And they, Coronado Fire called San Diego County Environmental Health, their hazardous incident response team, and they called me. And it got all over this burnt out building. It got all over the alley. It got all over the street. And we ended up spending like $300,000 cleaning that mess up.
Well, that brings you to the intro. Okay, now you guys get the call. How are you, like, I know what we would wear, and we were pretty good with this stuff, but do you guys wear, I mean, what kind of PPE do you wear? Hey, take a look around and see how many batteries you got laying around you right now.
Oh, I'm preparing for another battery course. So, of course, I've got like 15 1865 zeros floating around me.
See, batteries, they're everywhere, and major departments, major, minor, it's little, big, small, Little Big Neck Cove fire departments are starting to deal with these battery fires on a very regular basis.
Which is kind of why we're excited to tell you about a new partner, or a new product rather, that has proven to limit and control battery fire propagation. It's from a brand called DeGeo, and they are chock full of hazmat experts who know that there's absolutely a better way for us, the first responder, to be handling, storing, and shipping these at-risk lithium-ion batteries.
Yep, this product will solve your lithium-ion battery problems. It is lightweight. It works across all battery types. And actually, we can say this lives up to the hype because we've tested it firsthand.
It's called ObexionFR, and it's part of a 2-part system that is scientifically designed with granulars, along with a UN-certified pail or drum. And more importantly, the FR has been proven to reduce the toxic ideal H gases that are emitted when these lithium-ion batteries kick off. So ultimately, it's going to help keep your team safe.
So to learn more, go to ObexionFR.com, OBEXIONFR.com.
So we will wear PPE. It's pretty standard. It's we're going to wear some type of poly-coated Tyvek, like Saranex or Tychem. I mean, the mercury itself is relatively inert, so you don't have to worry about it reacting with the Tyvek, reacting with the suits. But here's the thing: it is a liquid. So you don't want to wear regular Tyvek because it'll go right through the suit, just like any other liquid will go through Tyvek.
So it's not a chemical compatibility; it's a physical issue.
Yeah, it's a physical issue. So you want to wear some type of poly-coated Tyvek with a sealed seam because it behaves just like a liquid. So if you wear regular Tyvek with the sewed seams, it'll go right through the Tyvek and you'll get it on your clothes. So you want a sealed poly-coated Tyvek with some type of sealed seam or bonded seam, and you want to wear latex booties, and then any type of chem glove, an inner and outer glove. We like the nitro gloves because they're sturdy and they're not super expensive. And then you can wear an air purifying respirator with a mercury vapor cartridge. The mercury vapor cartridges have a end of service life indicator on them. Now it's very important that you use an APR with a mercury cartridge that has an end of service life indicator on them. Some of the mercury vapor cartridges of late don't have that end of service life indicator on them, which is basically a chemical reactive tape that turns colors when the cartridges have been expended.
Okay.
Right.
Because mercury is a no-see-um, or has no warning properties. So if your cartridge had been expended, you would have no idea. And, it's kind of like radiation. You don't know you've been exposed to radiation unless you're monitoring for it. So. One of the things I do when I teach HAZWOPER classes or other types of hazmat classes, I always ask people, hey, raise your hand if you do a radiation survey on every single entry. And it's amazing how many hazmat teams don't do that. They don't do a radiation survey on every entry.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and especially in the state that you're in, for whatever reason, they are just very, I don't want to say nonchalant, but they're definitely not spun up on radiation like they should be.
well, and it's funny because we have at EPA, we have gotten into the practice now that we do mercury monitoring as part of our first in entries, because we have found it in so many places, and in places we're not expecting to find it, that we pretty much do mercury as a standard first in entry monitoring on every site.
If you're doing monitoring, what are the levels for you guys that trigger different
Yeah.
actions?
I want to drill into this because this is something that was always discussed, and it was like, well, is it seated nose height, and what about babies? I'm really interested in this part.
Okay, so for action levels, let's talk about occupational action levels first. So the OSHA PEL for mercury is 100,000 nanograms per meter cubed, or 100 micrograms per meter cubed. That number is super high.
Okay.
We do not follow that number, nor do we recommend first responders follow that number. What we follow with EPA is we use the ACGIH TLV, or threshold limit value, and that's 25,000 nanograms per meter cubed, or 25 micrograms per meter cubed. And then we add a safety factor of 0.5 onto that. So anything above 12,500 nanograms per meter cubed, we upgrade to level C. And it's very conservative, but we've always used that number, and that's what we use for our sites and for our responders, and pretty much everyone that that's what we teach, and pretty much everyone we know out here pretty much follows that action level.
All right,
But
explain that differently to me. If I hit 12,500
If you
nanograms
hit
per cubic meter,
12,500, yeah, if you hit 12,500 on the mercury vapor analyzer, we're recommending you upgrade to level C.
what about the occupants? Are you telling them to get out, or is it if
Okay,
they're
so
at
for
12,000, they can stay?
So for reoccupancy, the reoccupancy action level is 1,000 nanograms per meter cubed. So that's the cleanup standard. So the national cleanup standard is 1,000 nanograms per meter cubed. So anything, when we do a cleanup, that's what we clean up the sites to, is 1,000 nanograms per meter cubed. Anything above that, we're recommending that the site is not clean.
Got it.
And
Okay.
and that number comes from the Agency for Toxic Substance Disease Registry, which is the epidemiologic arm of CDC. They work pretty much exclusively with EPA on Superfund sites. And where that number came from is there was a whole bunch of sites many years ago in Chicago where they were replacing thermostats, and the contractor thought the way to get rid of the thermostats was just to take a hammer and knock the thermostats off the wall with a hammer and break the mercury switches in basements in Chicago. So they literally had thousands of homes that got contaminated.
Wow.
And
So,
is that reading at the point of release, or is that like, because I've also heard a seated adults where their nose is that reading?
So that is at the breathing zone.
Okay.
So that's 1,000 nanograms per meter cube at the breathing zone. So how we do an assessment is, let's take a house. So when we walk into a house, the first time we walk into a house, we will go in with booties and gloves on, and maybe some Serenix. We usually don't go in with a respirator right off the bat, but we'll open the front door. We'll put, we use a Lumex mercury vapor analyzer. We'll put our Lumex in the front door, and we'll see, hey, what is our initial reading? So if it's above that 12,500, then we'll upgrade to level C. If it's below that, then we'll go ahead and walk in the house and start doing our assessment. And we'll do our initial assessment at the breathing zone. And what we want to do is we want to start at an area of low concentration, and we want to work our way to the origin of the spill. Now, let's say we stick our Lumix in that front door, and boom, we're at 50,000 nanograms per meter cubed. That tells me right there that the entire house is completely contaminated, and I really don't have to do anything more. At that point, I'm going to completely dress out in level C, and we're going to try and figure out, okay, where is the origin? Is the whole house the origin, or is there one room that's the origin? We're going to try and figure that out. We might walk into the house and now there's visible mercury all over the place. Then we know, hey, whoever was in this house has been playing with it, and it's just spread all over the place. What we're going to do then is we're going to do what we call bag and tag. So we're going to start taking all the personal effects out of the house. So all the personal effects are going to be put into clear plastic bags. Our goal is to inventory and photograph all of that stuff as we put it into the bag. Because if we have to throw it out because it's contaminated, we don't want to have to take it out of the bag to inventory it and photograph it later. So the idea is you bag and tag it, is to photograph it and inventory it as you do that. But let me back up. Before we bag and tag, once we've determined that the house is a problem, the next thing we do before we do anything else is we go in and we videotape or film the whole inside and photo document what the inside of the house looks like. And this is more than anything else just to protect ourselves and protect the other first responders on scene. Because if we have to tear that house up to clean it, guess what? Every movie poster, every furniture on site, every watch we have on site,
the diamonds, the opulence.
it all turns into the gold standard. So let's say we had a watch that we have to get rid of because that's completely contaminated with mercury and there's no way we can ever get it clean. If we don't document what that watch was, that watch just turned into a Rolex. So we need to document all that stuff vigorously.
Yeah.
You also need to tell the landowner what your policy is on replacement. So our policy at EPA on replacement is we don't do replacement. We're in the demolition business. We're not in the construction business.
Beautiful.
So if we have to go in there and tear up all the carpet because it's all contaminated, we're not replacing it.
Right.
If we have to go in there and rip out your entire bathroom because you contaminated your bathroom, guess what? We're not replacing it. Like I said, we're in the demo business. We're not in the construction business. So you want to be upfront with the landowner or the tenant about what your policy on that is beforehand. And I like to put it in writing so they can't come back later and say, well, you didn't tell me.
Right.
And same thing as if you're doing a school and that type of stuff, or you're doing a commercial property, be upfront with them about, hey, this is what's going to happen. And this is what one of these cleanups looks like, because these cleanups can be very invasive. Yeah. I've done homes where the only thing that's left are the walls, the ceilings, and the studs.
Well, we've ripped out floors
literally
before.
nothing left.
Exactly,
We've had to rip out all the drywall and everything.
Wow, that's we've seen some incidents where they were insane, and you can do small, like a 3-inch by 3-inch section of the rug if they're lucky. But like you said, every time it's the family heirloom, it's been passed down for generations. It's like,
yeah, I mean, some of that stuff there are ways to clean it. We had a site where we had a whole briefcase full of Rolex watches. And we were in Las Vegas, and because that area has a lot of gold mining in there, we found a jeweler that actually had the capability to clean that type of stuff.
Wow.
He had ovens where he could bake it off. So we were able to find some place that was able to clean that.
We've heard of instances where buildings were so contaminated that that's what they did. They kind of heated the house up for many, many months and just baked it off.
Yeah, that's called heating and venting.
Yeah.
That's actually a technique we use called heat and vent, and we used to vent it out to the atmosphere. Nowadays, we don't really do that. Now we bring basically a negative air machine in that has a special filter on it where we can filter the air inside the building, and we don't have to vent it to the atmosphere.
Wow.
What are some of the other ways that you guys clean up mercury besides just demoing and heat and vent?
So a mercury vacuum. So a mercury vacuum, a special vacuum designed for mercury. You can tell them because they have a little capture container on the outside that spins off the mercury and collects it. So normally we'll vacuum up all the visible mercury. Another very common method is mercury amalgamation, where we'll amalgamate the mercury into a non-volatile form. The best amalgamation agent is dusting sulfur. They sell all sorts of commercial products out there. The commercial products are super expensive. They don't work any better than dusting sulfur. And you can go down to any garden store or Home Depot and buy a 50-pound bag of dusting sulfur.
Wow.
I recommend for all the hazmat teams out there, keep a couple of 50-pound bags of dusting sulfur at your station, and just put some in on the hazmat rig. And what you need to do is you need to vacuum up the bulk first, because you want to use it on the microbead. Don't put it on a big pool of mercury because it won't work.
Okay.
Good to know. Well, honestly, that was an excellent primer on mercury. Bob will be out in Continuing Challenge coming up, talking about mercury. I'm sure there's going to be questions. Do you have an email address if anybody wants to email you?
Yeah, you can go to wise.robert@epa.gov. And then also, if you go to response.epa.gov/region 9 training, it's the number 9. We have a 5-hour Mercury Response class online. It's free. Or you can send me an email and I'll send you the link.
I like that. Freeze for me. All right.
Oy.
Thanks for coming in and spending a little time with us. Appreciate your time.
No problem. You guys
Thank
have a good day.
Thanks.